Devadasi Devachi Bayako Saraya Gavachi, which means servant of the god, but wife of the town. And there'll be no memes today, there'll be no laughter today, because this institution is so depressing. Devadasi as Prasad. The Devadasi institution was sexually exploitative, excruciatingly painful natal alienation, were prepubescent, and were unmarried women, were given away to the temple by their family members. They would undergo branding. Sacred prostitution still practiced in various parts of India. What is fall? It's a season. It's not the Indian rupee. Fall. Hello and welcome to the 18th episode of Eyeshadow Etihaas. I am Ruchika Sharma and I teach history for a living. I have a few more credentials that have been listed in the description box. For those of you who are new here, Eyeshadow Etihaas is a passion project wherein I combine my love for eyeshadows, which is this stuff on my eyelids, and Etihaas, which is history. So in each episode, I talk about a topic of history while doing this particular eyeshadow look. Please know that there is a list of sources listed in the description box that you can go ahead and check out for a bit of an extra reading on today's topic, or you can go ahead and read them in case you just want to fact check whatever I say. Now that all that is sorted, let me introduce you to today's topic. Today we will talk about the Devadasis, who were a group of temple women who were associated with different temples and performed different functions at the temples, but there was so much more to this institution. Note that this institution was not the same throughout the various regions of the subcontinent, but this institution was practiced throughout most of the regions of the subcontinent. And while there were regional variations to the institution in its broad contours remained the same, specifically when it came to its exploitative aspect. The Devadasi institution was sexually exploitative, and these women had to go through an excruciatingly painful natal alienation, as well as be completely dependent on the temple for their upkeep. What makes this worse is that this institution is still practiced in various parts of India and is still thoroughly exploitative. And there'll be no memes today, there'll be no laughter today, because this institution is so depressing. I in no way want to minimize the pain that these women went through in history and are still going through, because the institution is still prevalent. And while I talk about this, I will be putting on this icy blue, cool blue eye look, which matches, as you can see, my icy blue, cool blue sweater, because it is autumn where I am and it is slightly chilly, so I'm wearing a sweater. And it's autumn, by the way, it's not fall. What is fall? It's a season. It's not the Indian rupee. Fall. Chale phir? So, Devadasi is a Sanskritized form of the Tamil word Devaradiyar or Tevaratiyar, which basically is a compound of the terms Tevara, which means God or Lord, and Atiyar, which means servant. And the term signifies temple women who would perform various ritual services for the temple. Since the institution of the Devadasis was so widespread in the subcontinent, they were known by various names according to the regions where they were from. In the Andhra region, they were called Yoginis, while in the Desh area, which is basically Maharashtra, they were called Muralis. Now that we know who they were, how did these women come to be attached to the temple? There were many ways. A few would voluntarily donate themselves to the temple, but a majority of these women were given away to the temple by their family members or by others such as kings. So for example, the Chola king, the famous Chola king, Rajaraja I, after building the Rajarajeshwara temple in Thanjavur, which is famous as the Brihadeshwara temple, in the 10th century donated 400 dancing girls to the Brihadeshwara temple. Why donate these women? Donating these women by kings or families or the society elites was considered to be dana, which begets blessings from the divine. So basically, donating women to earn divine merit. Lastly, a few women also became Devdasis by selling themselves to the temple, so which meant that the temple also bought women as Devdasis. Now all these temple women that were either donated or sold were young and were donated or given away just as they had hit puberty or were prepubescent and were unmarried women. Upon entering the temple service, they would undergo a spiritual marriage to the deity, and post their marriage they would undergo branding, where their body would be given a mark to symbolize their service to the temple. So for example, in the Tamilakam area, a Shaiva temple Devadasi or a Shaiva temple woman would have a trident stamped on her forehead. These women would then live on the temple property, that is, in the villages which were attached to the temple and given away as grants to the temple. And once inducted in the service of the temple, these Devadasis were employed in either singing or dancing or both, which were the most common reason as to why these women were needed in the temple. And under the cholas of Tamilakam, when the Bhakti movement was at its peak, collective singing of hymns composed by the Nayanar saints, Nayanars being the Shaiva worshippers, was one of the ways to worship at the temple. Devadasis would then sing these hymns and dance. Temple women were also required as attendants to the deity, where they would tend to the idols enshrined in the temple, like moving the fly whisk, making garlands for the deity, and so on. The other set of temple women were engaged in activities such as cooking the prasad, cleaning the temple, husking paddy. Fascinatingly, a set of high-functioning jobs at the temple, such as managing the temple estates, collecting taxes, were almost never entrusted to the temple women. Mostly, male temple employees would carry on these activities. And for these services, these women were remunerated in various ways, depending on the kind of task that they were engaged in and their length of service at the temple. They could receive as payment food which was cooked in the temple, clothes, rice, and even gold. Since Devadasis were married to the deities and could not marry mortals, their property rights have always interested scholars. Inscriptions have not really disappointed, since they mention that many temple women were given rights over the temple land called Kaan. Now this is a Tamil word and it is quite likely that I am pronouncing it incorrectly, but I will write the term here somewhere on the screen. Now most of these Kani rights were usufructory rights, which is basically the rights to use the land in different ways. For example, you could get specified taxes from the temple land. And a few of these rights would also grant to the temple women the right of alienation, which is basically a term that denotes the right to sell the land in any manner you deem fit, which is true ownership of the land. So these women, if they had the alienation rights, could sell the land or give it away to their progeny. Progeny? Wait a second. The Devadasis were supposed to lead an austere life and never really marry mortals. Did they have children? Yes, they did. The inscriptions are actually rife with mentions of the progeny of the Devdasis, telling us quite clearly that the Devadasi system was heavily sexually exploitative. In fact, if we look closely at the terms used in the inscriptions to refer to temple women, we are informed by scholars such as Leslie Orr that between a quarter and a third of inscriptions in Karnataka, Andhra, Odisha, as well as northern parts of India refer to temple women as prostitutes. Terms such as Vilasinis, Ganikas and Sulayar are used. In fact, in the Tamil corpus of inscriptions itself, terms like Bhogiyar and Bhogika are also mentioned, where Bhog is a Sanskrit term which means enjoyment or pleasure. But it's important to note that while the actual profile of the Devadasi doesn't itself require sexual service, various patrons of the temples, such as the landed elites, as well as the royalty, the kings, etc., and the temple priests, would often enter into sexual liaisons with these women. Also note that this practice, that the Devadasi system is sexually exploitative, was not unknown to the family members of those who dedicated one of their own to the Devadasi institution. Ideas of sacred prostitution have been linked to this institution. For example, where temple women were considered as auspicious or fertile would enter into a sexual liaison with the king or the royalty in order to ensure prosperity and fertility. This in fact tallies with how many of the royal courtesans served as temple women. The other explanation offered is that of the Devadasi as Prasad, wherein Prasad is an offering made to the deity and then is later enjoyed by the worshippers. Therefore, having sexual intercourse with these women would bestow upon the worshipper divine favor. This idea comes in a disturbing Marathi saying associated with the Devadasi, which goes like Devadasi Devachi Bayako Sarya Gavachi, which means servant of the god but wife of the town. The sexual exploitation that these women faced was systematic and was ratified by the temple institution. Religion in pre-modern societies was an all-pervasive force. Sexual exploitation sanctioned by religion or under the aegis of religion would give these women a complete no way out. Needless to say then that the women given away as Devadasis had no say in the matter. They would first face excruciatingly painful natal alienation of being uprooted from their family homes and being forced to live in temple hamlets, and then to be forced to perform various activities at the temple, which also included having forcible sexual intercourse with different patrons. Children born out of these unions were also employed in the temple service, especially daughters, who were again pushed into this horribly exploitative institution. What makes this worse is that none of this is a thing of the past, sadly. In today's free India, with the rule of the law, according to a recent statistic, around 17,000 women in the Andhra region and around 23,000 in Karnataka are still being sexually exploited. And that is all that I have for you today. Please note that there is a list of sources mentioned in the description box that you can go ahead and check out for a bit of an extra reading on the Devdasis, or in case you want to fact check everything that I blabbered over here. And before you just walk away, please like and share the video and subscribe to the channel. And do let me know what is it that you would like me to talk about in the next episode of Eyeshadow and Etihaas.